Hello? Hi. Everybody enjoy the keynote? Like that? I liked it too. I saw some new stuff as well. And I'm serious. Anyway, moving on. So I hope you did enjoy it. I'm Joe Stegman, Group Program Manager for the Silverlight Runtime team. And I'm going to spend the next hour and 15 minutes giving you an overview of some of the new Silverlight 3 features. What I do want to do up front is set some context on the area that I'll be focusing on for the next hour and 15 minutes, which is the runtime. And what the runtime is that's the core component that is basically downloaded and installed on your system. That's the thing that Scott talked about at the end that said it actually shrank in size. That's effectively the thing that I will be focusing on, and that contains, it really defines the sandbox for Silverlight, and it contains all the enabling features, the control model, the CLR, effectively the networking stack, the deep zoom capabilities, the out-of-browser stuff. That's all in that core. And so I'm going to focus on new things that we've added into that core piece in Silverlight 3. I'm not going to focus as much on some of the other areas, and Silverlight is really, you can think of it as almost as 4 big swaths, one being the runtime feature set. There's also a set of libraries that are built on top of the runtime, and those are, you can think of control libraries. Basically, our SDK is a set of libraries that includes additional controls, and I won't be spending as much time talking about those controls that are built on top of Silverlight. I also won't, there's a toolkit session I believe Sean Oster is giving that'll go into more details there. There is, we have some business libraries that are new in Silverlight 3 that Scott talked about a little bit, and those are also shipping in the SDK, and there's a couple sessions that go into more details on those. There's another big swath other than the SDK libraries is tooling, and there are a couple big areas of tooling. There's the developer tools, which is Visual Studio 2008, and there's a session on Friday, I believe, that's going to go into some details on the new features in the developer tools. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that, although my demos will be using Visual Studio. There'll be Visual Studio 2008, which is what Silverlight authoring is done in. One thing I do want to call out, though, is that we do have, in addition to the decreased size that Scott talked about for the runtime, we do have improved ZAP compression built into the tools now. So if you have standard code, or IL, if you will, assemblies and markup, you can see between 10 and 30% decrease in actually the size of your application, your ZAP, if you will. In Silverlight, ZAP is what we call effectively the same as an EXE on Windows, but it's basically your application. Expression Blend, the preview is available today, but there are, I think, at least 3 sessions that go into lots of details on all the new features, such as sketch flow and some of the other things that they've added, and I will save the details for that for those other sessions. So tooling is another big wide swath. The other wide swath is there's the back-end pieces that Silverlight talks to, and there's a couple big areas there. There's the media back-end, which is Windows Media Server and IS, and Scott talked about those a little bit this morning, but there are other sessions that are going into details of those and new features for those components. So I won't be spending a lot of time there either, and I have more than enough stuff to cover just on the core runtime. And the other piece is that we've got a new .NET RIA Services piece that's tied into .NET Server, and there's a session, I believe, at 4 today that's going into details on that. And we also have WCF integration in Silverlight, and there's a session, I believe, on Friday or Thursday. Eugene's giving that we'll go into a lot more details on that. So those are all the big pieces, but I'm going to be focusing on that core download that you get installed on your system. So with that, let me get running into some of the fun stuff. One of the first features that we announced in Silverlight 3 was H.264, and if you're an end user of Silverlight, you got it installed on your system, and you're getting some bits delivered to you, you're watching a movie, you may not care that it's H.264, and then it's AAC, and then it's an MP4 container. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure you don't. However, if you're a content author and somebody who's actually generating content, chances are you want your content to be available on the widest available of devices and PCs. And most everybody here has probably got some kind of smartphone or some kind of phone that can play back media of some sort. And it's quite likely that the media playback capabilities built into that device is H.264. So what that means is a lot of content authors already have to generate content in H.264 format in order to be able to target the hardware decoding on these devices and save their battery life. So they're already doing that already. So for that reason, it was super important for Silverlight to do the same sort of thing to give you a nice bridge for your content to be able to run on your devices as well as running in Silverlight. So that's something that we added, and I'll show you a really exciting demo of H.264 playback. I kid you not. And I'll be showing that in 2 slides. But one of the things that you will, as an end user, you may care about is that we do AAC, which means that you can play back content that if you've ripped something in iTunes, the default format is typically AAC, so you can now play that back in Silverlight or post it up on the web and play that back. QuickTime as well uses H.264, so you can take QuickTime movies and play those back, for example. So the big differences between H.264 and Silverlight and VC1, VC1 being WMV and WMA, the big differences really today are mostly around DRM, our digital rights management. It's something today in Silverlight we support for VC1 and we don't yet support for H.264. It's something that we are looking at and investigating and trying to figure out how best to bring it into the product. And the other one is that you can do media delivery from IIS for both H.264 and VC1, but today Windows Media Server supports just VC1, and it's another thing that we're looking at how to enable at some point in the future. So GPU acceleration was something Scott talked about, but I do want to spend just a minute to sort of clarify how we use this feature within Silverlight. And to take you back just a minute to Comp Sci 101 or Computer Engineering 101, all your devices, including your mobile phone, your PC, they have this thing here as a CPU in it, which is what everybody's familiar with, the typically Intel-based thing or AMD-based thing. And then it's also got a GPU in it as well. And the GPU, or the graphics processing unit, is typically good for a couple things. One is doing 3D. But the other thing it does really well is it stretches pixels really well. And it adds pixels together really well. And you may not think that's a big deal, but it turns out it's actually pretty math intensive to stretch a pixel. You got a pixel that's 1 by 1 and you want to stretch it to 1.1 by 1.1. Turns out there's actually a lot of math involved in doing that. So anytime you're stretching pixels or blending pixels together where you have some level of opacity on top of another scene that has a level of opacity, we can leverage the GPU. And what this does, it means your Silverlight application, it won't actually look visually different. What it does mean is that it'll perform better. So you use less CPU. If you're playing back full screen media, it means you'll be able to get a better playback experience for full screen media. This works in browser and out of browser. And so what I'm going to do next is demo both those 2 features as best as I can demo 2 features that are about pixels on the screen and better performance. However, what I will say at this point in time, though, is that Seema is giving a talk on Thursday where she is talking about GPU in much greater detail, where she's actually going to do the task manager pull-up and show you performance in a much greater, deeper way that will really show you the benefits of GPU acceleration. I'm just going to give you a quick tour of how to turn it on. And there are several media talks that will go into how to use, whether it's VC1 or H.264, they'll talk about creating the content, ingesting the content, encoding the content, and playing back the content. I'm going to give you a quick teaser here. So with that, I'm going to jump over to Visual Studio. Can people in the back see that? Yes, I assume so. No one's screaming. This is a very simple Silverlight app, and all it is basically got a media element in it. And it's playing back an MP4 file, and it just so happens that it's the same MP4 file that Scott played back earlier. So as I said, this is a really exciting demo because what you're now seeing is you're seeing VC1 bits played back versus seeing, or you're seeing MP4 or H.264 bits played back versus VC1 bits. So, you know, it turns out a decoded pixel is a decoded pixel and they all look the same. But anyway, that's my amazing H.264 demo. Hold the applause till the end, please. Please. So it gets better. I'm going to do some GPU stuff, and then we'll get into some really wacky stuff. So what I want to do now is that when I was playing back that video, I wasn't actually stretching it at all. So now I'm going to show you stretched H.264 video. And now what you don't realize here is that, and you actually can see it's maybe a slightly bit clunky, is that we're actually using, Silverlight is using the CPU in this case, to actually stretch those pixels. And that's a fairly complex math operation to actually do that stretching in that case. So one of the things you can do is you can leverage the GPU for actually doing that stretching for you to give you a better playback experience. And the way that that is done is that GPU is enabled, you have to turn it on first at the plugin level. So where you're actually hosting Silverlight on your web page, you have to opt into it. And the reason this is because, first and foremost, we have to actually create an additional surface, a GPU surface, if you will, that we need to then composite into. And again, Seema will go into details in her talk of when you want to use GPU acceleration and when you don't. But suffice to say is that there is at least a very small cost, and that we have to at least, when you opt into it, and we have to at least create this additional surface. The other thing I want to do is, which you don't want to do in a production app, is I'm going to turn on cache visualization, which will give you a visual indicator of what's actually being GPU accelerated. And now I'm going to run it. Whoa. It's a trap. Wow. Turu, man. Thank you. No, we got it. I'm okay. I've done this before. I've made mistakes before. I'll make several others, and I appreciate your help because you'll need to. Now, you may say, everybody's thinking he just made a mistake, and he probably meant to actually turn on hardware acceleration for the media playback. Well, I actually didn't. I wanted to show you what happens when you have visualizers on is that we paint everything that we're drawing red. So what you see here is everything's red because I'm not actually hardware accelerating anything at this point in time. I'm not hardware accelerating the stretch. And that's because we actually opt in at the plugin level. And then because you may be doing, you don't necessarily want every single one of your controls to be their own surface. It may sound wonderful, but it turns out, and Seema will go into details, it's not so wonderful to do such a thing. So you want to opt in sort of at a per element level. And in this case, for a media element, I'd love to opt in by setting cache mode equals bitmap cache. And make sure I type it correctly this time. And run it again, and we'll go into full screen. This time you'll see the playback looks the normal color. And so, as I said, the first demo, it's really tough to demo that I'm showing H.264 playback and hardware acceleration, which are both really not things that are super visible to your end user. So there it is. And again, hold applause to the end. That's actually using the GPU to stretch that video. So with that, that's my first set of demos that I'll be showing, and after this they get a little bit more interesting. So moving on to the slide deck. Scott talked about Perspective 3D and said we added this, and some people are wondering what is Perspective 3D? Why do you not just call it 3D? Is there something we should be aware of about this feature, and what does that really mean? Well, what Perspective 3D means is think of being able to take a postcard or a 2D object and treat it as if it's in 3D space. And it's the demo shots showed in the keynote. It's not actually about taking a full 3D object and putting it in 3D space. How many people here have done 3D programming before? So actually a 3D as in true 3D programming with 3D models. So that's what I'm assuming that the raise of hands meant. It turns out, for a person who can't type true correctly, the true 3D is hard. And one of the nice things about our 3D model, where it's just 2D objects in 3D space, is it gives you, 80% of the benefit of 3D, but makes it much more approachable, as I'll show you in a demo here in a couple slides. But what we allow you to do is basically take that object and treat it as if it's in 3D space. You can paint whatever you want on there, controls, have whatever you want on there. You can rotate it, flip it, all sorts of wonderful stuff, which can create some really pretty amazing effects. The other thing that I want to talk about, because it's in my next demo, is animation easing. How many people know what animation easing is? Okay, it's really, think of in Silverlight 2, sort of the default way to animate something from point A to point B was a linear animation. You could do more than that, but linear just meaning it almost came across as really robotic type of animation. And so there's a set of standard stock animations, if you will, that effectively make it so that you can take animations and very easily create them in a way that makes them look a lot more natural. and things like being able to do a bounce at the top, something like that. But there's a set of these called Penner equations that are very common to apply to animations. And so we've basically added those directly into the platform. And it makes it really easy to create nice-looking, organic-looking animations. And in my next demo, I'm going to show a combination of those two. So with that, let's jump back into a slightly more exciting demo than I showed last time. And I'm going to take that. Actually, I think this time I set up a little bit of a facade, and I have a slightly different media element because I didn't really want to draw attention to the media in here. So I pulled one that was a little bit more subtle. But this is really similar to the last demo I showed you, only it's VC1. But it's just a video playing back of old VC1 robots demo. So what I'd like to do is I want to take that thing and now start to manipulate it in 3D space, if you will. And the way that I do that is I'm going to put it in a perspective plane. Now, the media element itself in this sample, just so everybody's aware, the media element had, just so I could call it out on the black background, there's that white border around it. So the media element in this sample is sitting in a border, and that's what the white is around it. And I'm going to apply the perspective to the border around it. I could apply it to the media element as well, but the way I do this, and you could do this same thing using tools. I'm trying to intentionally show you exactly how it works sort of behind the scenes to show you how easy it is to do these sorts of things in Silverlight. But all I need to do in order to sort of start treating that thing in 3D space is I'm going to add a border dot projection. And underneath there, I'm going to add a plane projection. And basically what I'm doing here is I'm setting the projection property on the border, which is what that media element is in. And I'm setting it to a new plane projection, which is a new type we have in Silverlight. And I'm going to give it a name, P3. And these are all the things I can do to that plane projection. And just so you can get a quick taste of what I can do easily, I'll set rotation Y equal minus 30. And call it good, and run it. And now you see real easily, I took that thing and I just slid it back. Really super easy. The APIs, anybody who's dealt with 3D APIs, not anybody. There's some people who just really groove in 3D space, but most people who've dealt with 3D can tell you that it's pretty hard to do some basic stuff with 3D modeling. So this makes it really approachable. So let's take that one step further, though, and show you something a little more interactive. I'm going to go ahead and create a slider. So all I did is I just took off the default value I gave and set its height to, or set its width. Let's see, width equal to 400. Set the minimum. Sometimes I get this wrong, equal to minus 180. And the maximum equal to 180. And now what I'm going to do is set the value. And I'm going to use another new feature in Silverlight 3, which is being able to do UI to UI binding. So think of doing fully declarative binding. So I'm going to set a binding to rotation X, and I'll go back and explain this. Mode equals two-way, and element name, this is the key part, equals P3. And what I just did is that plane projection I added, the thing controlling the 3D space, I named that 3D, and I took my slider, and declaratively, I bound my slider's value property. So as I drag the slider, the value is what changes. I bound that to the rotation X property of that plane projection. So let's see what kind of effect that gives us. So now I can play the video. Waiting, really, waiting. There it is. So now I can flip it around 180 degrees. By the way, anybody know what that is? You're not going to see this in many demos today. That's the backside of pixels, right there. Backside of pixels. Turns out, scientists have been trying to figure out what they look like. They look the same as the front side, only they're reversed. It's pretty amazing stuff. But anyway, you can see really super easy to be able to start working with perspective 3D. So with that in mind, let's just show you, you get the idea there. I'm going to go ahead and drag in, just to speed it up, I'm going to take what I just did, and where did that go? Sorry. Well, I had it in there. Well, I guess I won't worry about it. So we'll go ahead and drag in a Y and Z rotation. So I'm basically doing the same thing I did before, and now I'm doing it, though rather than binding to rotation X, I'm binding to rotation Y, and I'm binding to rotation Z. And the other thing I've done in here is I've taken the sliders and I put them in a couple text boxes so that it tells you what the property is that I'm manipulating. And you can see I can do Y and I can do Z. So Z being going straight into the page, and Y being vertical like this, and X being like this. So as I spin Z, it spins around that axis there. So again, really easy to work with. So continuing on that theme, just to show you a couple other properties that you can manipulate here. I can do the same with center X and center Y. And what this does is I can now push effectively the absolute location of where this thing is rotating, or the point this is rotating about. And I don't know why it's being slow right now. So now I can change the center of rotation, and by doing that I can create this sort of door type effect. And if you want the door to open the other way, wouldn't it be nice if you could do this just in your house like that? Very easy, very simple. And the same with center rotation Z. That's kind of fun. I'll put X back because I can make it go into the page, or rather than on its point before, or now it'll come, whoops, not that one. We'll go the other way on center Z. And now when I do this, you'll be able to rotate it out towards us. Whoa, look out. So anyway, really flexible, really powerful. Now, yeah, thank you. Now, I actually didn't know Scott was going to do this morning, but I have some controls I was going to shove in here, just to let you know, it doesn't work just with media. You know, it works with, I have a data grid in here. I'm filling the data grid, so I can do the exact same thing with the data grid, and I can rotate it around backwards. So the kind of cool thing here is that now you can type in reverse. And it's really weird to try to do this. So I've been doing it for a while. I'm like, wow. But anyway, it's pretty dang flexible. And yeah, you can do it on angles and upside down and that sort of a thing. So super powerful. But why I'm here, actually I'm going to come back to the export in a minute. I do want to show off a gratuitous feature, but why I'm here, let me show you a couple other things related to this. I'm going to pull off the sliders here real quick and touch on some of the animation stuff we did, and then I'll come back to the export button. So everything that plane projection works with our animation system the same as any other control does. And I'm going to just drag in a set of animations here, and they're targeting that storyboard, or I mean, excuse me, they're targeting that plane projection, and they're targeting those properties I was just playing with, rotation X, and I'm also targeting global offset. So meaning I can actually change where that thing lives in 3D space, that border. And what I've done is I've taken it one step further, and so I've added some animation so that now if I use the arrow keys, I can actually animate this. And there's no other magic here other than me just dragging in our animations that existed in Silverlight 2 and just targeting them at these new properties on this new control. But what I want to show you here is that you see the animation looks a little robotic, and these are just our default canned animations. And what I want to do is show you how easy it is, and by the way, the tool does this for you, but show you how easy it is to fix those canned linear animations, if you will, and make them look a little snazzier. So the way to do that is on the animation itself, you can set an easing function. And we have canned easing functions, but you can write your own easing function. And I'm going to use canned one. And, you know, just for fun here, just because, we're going to use something bizarre. We're going to use an elastic ease and, oscillations. Won't make it too bad. 1 maybe. just so you get the idea. So what was a linear animation is now going to be something with a little bit of oscillation in it, and like that. Now, I'm not a designer, so that probably looks really lame. So rather than trying to whip up something myself, I basically was playing around with cover flow and the animations they had in there, and it turns out that their animation that they use in cover flow, which is iTunes thing, looks a lot like this, which is basically an exponential animation. So I'm going to add this to, there's actually two sets that I've got here. One is for going left and one is for going right. And all I have to do is basically take those animations, apply this easing mode to it, which is this exponential ease. And again, it's really easy to do in the tool, but just to give you an idea of what that means is that now I can go ahead and get this nice snappier, more organic kind of looking like, it's on a spring and being pulled real quickly and then slowed down kind of thing. So we make it really easy to be able to build these things that look a lot better than just sort of the canned animations out of the box. So I do want to get to this sort of export thing here. So one of the new things we added in Silverlight 3 was the ability to do a file save. And this is really important because it's one of the things that you just plain can't do today in HTML. And it's fairly straightforward to do a file save. And the way I'll do this is I'm going to go onto that export button. And I'm going to go ahead and do click equals and add a new event handler. And I'm going to navigate to the event handler and then write some code. So the way I would do this is I'm going to go ahead and create a new save. It's called the save file dialog. And I'd call it SFD equals new. And you guys have already seen what a terrible typist I am. So rather than bore you with my numerous typos, I have just a little bit of code that I'll walk you through here that kind of shows this. And it actually leads me to yet another gratuitous feature. So save file dialog. I'm creating a new one. I'm setting the filter to be CSV, which is, in this case, I'm exporting to something that Excel already knows about. And the way it works is that you call save file dialog.show dialog. It'll bring up the dialog. If the user actually clicks a file, they actually select a new file, this will return true. And what we don't want to do for security reasons is we don't want to give the developer any sort of access to any sort of path information on the file system. So we don't actually return a path to the user. Instead, what the save file dialog will do is it'll allow you to just basically open the file they selected. So you as a developer know they selected a file, and you can open that. You know nothing else about the file. You don't know where it is. You don't know the path information. You just know you can open it. And so we give you a stream that you can then go party on that stream. In this case, what I'm doing is I'm going through all the data in my data model that's in my data grid, and I'm just writing it to that stream, and then I'm closing the stream. So what's the end result? Is now I can bring this up, click export, and I'll save it on my desktop and say I'll just say mix because my default extension is CSV. Save it, go back to my desktop, and see what we got there. And we have nothing because I'm not on my desktop. Here we go, and there it is, mix.csv. I can open it up, and I bring it up in Excel. So really simple, really easy. Okay, so while I'm here, I'm going to show one more gratuitous feature just because it somewhat fits. And that is when I'm bringing up the dialogue, wouldn't it be nice if I could just blur out the background? And you may say, why would you want to do that? Because it's a gratuitous feature. And because I do. So the way to show you how my page is authored, the main base control on my page is named layout root. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a new effect. And I talk about effects in a couple slides. But we have these, and Scott mentioned them, but we have new built-in effects that you can apply to elements. And I'm going to take my base root element here, and I'm going to apply a blur effect to it. And it's really super simple. All I have to do is say blur effect, bf equals new blur effect, and I can set the radius, blur radius as, and set it to 8. Doesn't matter, I could have taken the default, and then I could say layout root dot effect equals blur effect. And when I'm all done, by the way, I want to say my layout root dot effect equals null to make it go away. And so that's it. I just wrote that little bit of code. I could do this in markup as well. Create a new blur effect when I bring up that dialog. So now I bring that up. See the background blurred out. Tells me that it's not active. And when this goes away, bang, back to normal thing. So really simple. And I will talk a little bit more about effects in a couple slides and give you a little bit more details on it. Oh, perfect timing. Amazing how that works out. So effects. What are effects? And effects are really about impacting the visual behavior and not necessarily the functional behavior of the item that they're applied to. So when I just applied that effect to the full screen there, actually if I didn't have the dialog up, I could still interact with the screen in the same way I could before. All we're doing is we're changing the visual appearance of the screen versus actually impacting behavior, hit testing area, or that sort of thing. And by default in Silverlight 3, we have two built-in effects, and those are drop shadow and blur. However, we provide the ability to create your own custom effects. And custom effects are implemented in something called, or we implement them as pixel shaders, or something internally we just call shaders. And how many people out there have ever written a pixel shader? Wow, that's amazing. Surely you jest. So if you actually, all you people will want to attend Seema's talk. I think, Seema, you are going to show how to write a pixel shader. I'm not going to show you how to write a pixel shader. I will show you how to use a pixel shader and talk about what they do. But shaders are actually not authored in C# or VB.NET. For Silverlight, you typically author them in HLSL, which is high-level shader language. And that's actually something that comes with DX. How you author them really doesn't matter that much, because what Silverlight actually uses is the bytecodes. That's the output of DX SDK utility that takes HLSL and compiles it into bytecodes. Again, Seema will talk about this in detail. The main thing you need to know, though, is that even though it's the easiest thing to use is a DX utility to create these, our shaders run on Mac, they run on Windows. We just need the bytecodes. That's all we need. That's all we operate on. But really, what a shader is, the easiest way to think about a shader is that when you apply a shader or an effect to an element, we give you, the developer, great power. Before we write any one of those pixels to the screen, we say, hey, you want to do anything with it? You want to do anything with it? And if you want to do something with it, you do something with it. If you don't, you don't. So in other words, you can create just about any effect you want, because we say before we write it, what do you want to do? And you could decide, I don't want to do anything. Or you could say, I want to turn all my pixels red. And we give you a couple parameters. We give you kind of, for the element, we kind of walk through all the pixels, and we tell you what position we're at. And we say, we're at position 0, 0. You want to change that pixel? And you can say, sure, or no. So it gives you a tremendous amount of power. But as you can imagine, we're calling a function each time we write a pixel to the screen for that element. So with great power comes great responsibility, and I leave it to Seema to emphasize the responsibility part in her talk on Thursday. But I still want to show them because they're pretty cool. And I'll show a demo of them in a couple slides. We also added pixel APIs. Now, how many people in the course of their development history, assuming you're developers, have ever needed to read or write a pixel? Really? I'm shocked. Not everybody? Man, there's some people I think who just like to put their hands up and some people who don't. That's what I'm coming up with. Anyway, it turns out this is something we didn't support directly in Silverlight 2, and it was really painful. We had some workarounds, not super performant. So in Silverlight 3, based on overwhelming customer feedback, we've added the ability to read and write pixels to a bitmap. And really, our pixel APIs come in two forms. The first one is just thinking of reading and writing pixels to just some bitmap you create. And the second part of that is we also allow you to take a visual, if you will, and a visual being anything displayed on the screen. We allow you to take that thing and actually shove it into a bitmap. So you can do further processing on that. And the key scenario for that is if you ever want to do a drag and drop type scenario where you want to take a snapshot of what you're basically dragging over, this gives you the ability to now do that very easily. So like a drag effect, that sort of a thing. And next, right after this slide, I will show a demo of that. Raw audio and video APIs, that's something else that we added. And you can think of these as the exact same as pixel APIs, only over time. They're pixel APIs over time. So you can change effectively the media stream, if you will, or the media buffer over time to use our media APIs to actually create effectively. You could use them to create your own audio decoders or video decoders, or if you just dynamically wanted to generate video or audio on the fly, you could use these APIs to do that sort of a thing. I won't actually be demoing the raw audio or video APIs. There are some nice demos I think we released with Silverlight that you would be able to pick these up. If not, come by and stop by and see me, and I can point you to some samples of where we use this. So with that, I'm going to jump over to a demo again. And the first demo I'm going to do is really pretty basic. I like to keep the demos really simple and understandable. So I know there was a lot of information in this morning's keynote. And my goal here is to just make it really digestible. Because a lot of these features we've added, even though we've added a lot, they're actually really simple and easy to use. And unfortunately, I'm going to go back and show that same video again. And what I want to show here is, if you can imagine, maybe I want to be able to click on this thing, click on the video, and drag it somewhere. And I want to show the drag effect such that it shows what's currently displaying or currently showing in that video as I start the drag effect. So I'm not going to actually code up the whole drag effect, but more I'm just going to show you how easy it is to actually create something that would conceptually look like that. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to add a, let's see, I'm going to add a wrap panel, and there it is, down here. And the wrap panel is a new control shipping in the SDK, and it basically does exactly what it says. It's a wrap panel, so you shove stuff in it, and it just kind of keeps wrapping. And what I'm going to do over in my code is I'm going to go to this, first of all, the media element. And when I click on it, I want to sort of simulate that drag operation. So I'm going to do a mouse left button down, and I'm at event handler, and go into that. And now I'm just going to I'm going to shoot the dice here. I'm going to write some code. The whole sample, I'm not dragging anything over. And I'm going to create a new writable bitmap. This is the thing that actually we use to, you can read or write pixels into it, or you can render a visual into it. And going back to my example again real quickly just to show you, the name of my media element is called ME, and that's what's playing that movie. And I'm going to create a new bitmap, and what's the size I'm going to create it? Well, I'm going to take my media element's actual playing size and use that for it, because I want to take a snapshot of that. So, whoops, that's not what I want. ME dot, you're going to have to watch me. You know how I like to screw up. Pixel, and then this, right, so I gave it the height of my bitmap, which is the size of the media. And here I can select the format for the pixels. One is pre-multiplied RGBA, or it's backwards, one of the two. Anyway, Seam will tell you all about these things. Yeah, one has Mike says one has alpha and one doesn't. I picked the one that doesn't have alpha because I'm actually not using alpha here. And then all I have to do is that to actually render that visual is I'm going to call render on that media element. It's that simple. And we do take a transform because you may want to modify that, and I don't want to modify it, so I'm just going to give it a new matrix transform with nothing in it. That's it. Now I've got this thing called a writable bitmap with a snapshot of what's playing in my media element. Now I need to do something with it. So what can I do with it? Well, let's create a new image. And we'll set the height of the image. We'll make a thumbnail, so like 64. And I want my images, I'm putting them in a wrap panel, so let's do a margin as well. And new threshold or thickness 10. So I want them 10 apart. That sounds good. 10. And image.source. This is where the tricky part comes in. It's not really tricky. I create a writable bitmap. I'm going to set the source to, you got it, the writable bitmap. That's it. Now let's just add it to the tree. Thumbs.children. Is that what I called it? Thumbs. Children. I don't like it that it doesn't like that. I don't like it that it doesn't like that. Yep, it likes it. Oh, good. So now, when I click, there's a snapshot. snapshot, snapshot, snapshot. You get the idea. So really simple. Snapshot. Snapshot. Sorry, sometimes I catch myself at home running the sample, and I'm just trying to catch all the cool scenes in here. Anyway, really super simple. And I'm not joking there either. My wife and kids do think I'm crazy. Wait, I got another demo in here that I'll show in a couple that, man, this was really freaked me out. Don't be, it's okay. I'm okay, I think. So let's go on to another demo. Whoops, don't want that. So I'm going to do another effects demo, and this one I'm not going to build up from scratch. I'm just going to go ahead and run it. This is effectively a takeoff from what I did before to show you. In this case, what I want to do is I'm dragging, and this is just to show you how I created that drag effect. I used exactly what I showed before to create this drag effect. And what this demo does is I've got basically two things. Let's get rid of the background. I've got a background image, and I've got a foreground media element. So I can go ahead and change my background, which is what I do by dragging on the left, and I can change my foreground when dragging on the right. So, but I don't want to quite make this work really good yet. And first I want to do something gratuitous, which is, you know, I'm not a designer, but I do think these buttons, which are mostly using Silverlight 2 features, I think they would look great with a drop shadow. So don't you? Yeah? Yeah, of course. So I'm going to go into my existing template. I mean, I think they'd look good with a really gratuitous drop shadow. And so border, dot effect, and I wish we had something called really gratuitous drop shadow. We don't. We just have drop shadow. However, I can set the shadow depth to something like 20 and opacity equal to 0.5. And that's the same as a really gratuitous drop shadow. You'll see. I mean, it's great. Because look, I mean, it's like way out in space. It's great. So anyway, total gratuitous use of a feature to show you how easy it is to add a drop shadow. But what I want to do, though, is that I got this great little app, and it's got some green screen video in here. But, you know, wouldn't it be nice, since I'm actually overlaying them, it'd be really nice if I could find some way to subtract out some pixels here. And wait, shaders give me the ability to basically modify a pixel before I write it. So if I could write a shader that I could pass it a color and say, hey, green, for example, and it could take every green pixel I had and turn it into transparent, or every black pixel I had and turn it into transparent, I could maybe get a neat effect from that. So I've done exactly that sort of a thing. So Silverlight Media today doesn't support an alpha key in the video itself. So effectively what I'm showing here is that I have video that is chroma key tagged, either black or green in this case, and now I'm going to use a shader to see if I can mask off, if you will, that chroma key. And my media element is actually right here. And I've already, not going to actually write the shader here. Again, I'll defer to SEMA for that. But I already have I think it's data. I think it's alpha shader. Yeah, it's got to be data alpha shader. I've already got, I know what it is. I need media element, dot effect, and name my shader as alpha shader. There it is. Now, the one thing I did say about my alpha shader is that it does need a color, and it's the color to mask off. Now, the one thing that I'm not showing here is that what my alpha shader does, it's a little smarter. This whole model, my sample here, as simple as it is actually a data-bound sample, and my shader is actually pulling into my data model to actually get the alpha color. But so that aside, all I'm doing is adding the alpha shader. Now let's see what sort of cool effects we can create. We can take a leaf and we can burn it. That's nice. Or we can make skiers jump over. Ooh, watch out, watch out. Ooh. That's close. Or we can have John McCain speak in front of skiers. Or we can have John McCain speak in front of a flame. Flame. There we go. And that's not a political statement at all. These just happen to be the demos I had that supported this. So anyway, you get the idea. You can do all kinds of cool stuff, and I encourage you to go have fun with shaders and effects. And not to overbore you, I'm actually just going to bring up one more sample, and just to show you the other side of not pixel shaders, but bitmap APIs. And what this is that this is a fractal generator. And in this case, here, every time I dive in, I'm basically recalculating, oh, I just screwed up. I dug in too deep. But luckily, I've integrated with some of our new history mechanism, which they'll talk about, Brad Abrams will talk about in our next session to be able to go back on this. But really what I want to show is all this is doing is it's dynamically generating, whoops, I don't know what I did there. It's dynamically generating the image as I drill into it using our pixel API. So this right here is actually not a deep zoom image. It's a fractal that's being dynamically generated as I dive in. So another cool use of our pixel APIs. So with that, I will move on to some more topics and some other. I'm closing some of these versions of Visual Studio I got here. And let's go back to some more talking. Local messaging. This is a new feature where we allow Silverlight plugins to talk with other Silverlight plugins. And you can have a Silverlight plugin talk to another Silverlight plugin on the same page. That means the same HTML page. You can have one Silverlight plugin talk to another plugin on different tabs of the same browser. Or you can have multiple plugins, or you can have multiple plugins or two different plugins talk to each other in different instances of browsers on the same actual, as long as they're on the same system, if they can be in different browsers and talk to each other. So you go, why would you want to do this? Well, one, for a parts model, it works out really well. The other thing is that there are a lot of people who are building sites that have mixed mode HTML, and they have Silverlight in them, and they want to make them look real seamless, so they may have different parts of Silverlight and HTML, and this gives you a real high-fidelity way to have your different Silverlight parts and HTML parts all talking together. Effectively, the implementation is a shared memory implementation, and it's exposed like named pipes. It's string-based messages. By default, it is secure, meaning that your plugin can only talk to other plugins that have come from the exact same domain, and they also have to share basically a handle for the communication path that they want to talk on. But in other words, foo.com can only speak to other controls that are hosted from foo.com, and only if both those controls opted into talking to each other. Now, on the other hand, you can open this up so that you can say, I want any other plugin to be able to talk to my plugin, if you so choose as a developer. So it's pretty powerful. And let me just show you a couple demos that are using this. So the first one is pretty straightforward. This is going to bring up 4 instances of browser, IE in this case, but it doesn't matter. And I can bounce some balls between them. So you can see they're all synchronized, and they're just sending messages back and forth to each other going, hey, where are those balls? And Mike, I think, once told me he did this for a couple minutes and got a ton of balls in there. So it works, you can see, quite performant. But you get the idea. So pretty powerful stuff. But as I started putting together the sample, I started thinking about this a bit. And it got me thinking about an application that was written for Silverlight 2, which I'll run here real quickly. And this application basically was a chess app. And the nice thing about the chess app was you could have the browser's JavaScript engine. So basically we had 2 implementations of the chess logic, if you will. And one was a JavaScript implementation, and one was a C# implementation. And so you could take different browsers and have the Silverlight C# engine run against the browser's JavaScript engine, which sounds pretty cool. So I started thinking, and I go, if I can actually and the way that it works is that we give the JavaScript engine so much time and the C# engine so much time. So I started thinking, I go, well, you know, I could use this and just have the JavaScript engines of multiple browsers battle it out. So rather than do acid tests or any of that other crap, let's just solve the browser wars the old-fashioned way. So I just so happens, this is the one that my wife is thinking, you're loony, what are you doing? And what I'm doing is, let's just bring up Chrome, and you pick your favorite browser, it doesn't really matter. So I'll run Chrome, and I don't know, Firefox maybe? Firefox 3, I got the latest updates on here. So let's go ahead and run this. And, hey, not good, not cool. What happened? We'll get it. I did, didn't I? No reason to fear. We'll get to the demo. It's just, let's run it again. Let's figure out what the port was. Thanks for picking that up. And then we'll still bring up Chrome and Opera, maybe? I've tried them all. I can tell you which ones are better. At least in this war. Okay, we'll get there. Here we go. Let's see if we can run it. Okay, there's the URL I want. Okay, now let's do Chrome. There we go. There it is. Good. Now we go Firefox. Okay, perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pit this guy. Will say we'll make Chrome white in this case, and we'll make Firefox red. And we want this to be remote, so red's remote. And this is going JavaScript to JavaScript. And let's go battle it out. So I just sit here and I would watch this and I go, wow, what's going on? And I do some Howard Cosell type commentary. Yeah, it's mesmerizing. So I know you guys are dying to figure out who wins. I can tell you who usually wins, but we'll save it for later. I'll make the app available. If I have time at the end, I'll actually run it. I've run every combination you can imagine. I've run, and it's actually pretty fun to watch them. So, yeah. So sorry, I will run it at the end if I have time. Sometimes it goes a while.
We're in Vegas. What do you want us to open a book?
Okay, if you're going to start, you're going to make me do it, aren't you? I'm going to do it. Okay, here we go. And since I'm in Vegas, I'm taking bets. So line forms here for Chrome, here for Firefox. The odds are even up until you guys bet them up or down. Okay, let's do it. Firefox, okay? These are the latest versions of both. It really doesn't take that long, actually, to run it. So we'll go local here. And it is, sometimes it can be a little bit random. So we'll see how it turns out. It's usually never that long, though. Okay, Firefox, maybe not up for the challenge. Here we go, remote. JavaScript against JavaScript. Let's give it a whirl. This is really exciting you, huh? I feel like I'm missing some prime time to speak here. It seems pretty even. Well, who's got it? I should pull this one over so you can see. Who's got the... Oh, nope. I thought it might be a stalemate. See, this is seeing some prime. There you have it. See, I generally have a way to solve that. Is that which is a really cool feature. So let's figure. Who do we want to help Firefox out here? I can just switch them over to C# and see if that makes. No. Sometimes, let's see if we can find one of these that's. Oh, there we go. So technically, I invalidated the actual results, but so I let him think like C# for a while, and there you go. Oh, this is getting nasty. No. You took up 3 minutes of my time for that. I'm glad you find it amusing, but anyway. Chess Wars. Soon coming to your iPhone. No, just joking. So other things that I'm actually not going to spend a lot of details on because Karen Corby is talking about a lot of this stuff on Friday, but do want to give at least some context on some of the cool new things that we've done from a UI framework perspective, which is for people who are familiar with WPF, one of the main things we were asked for was merged resource dictionaries, so we've added that. Based on styles, so now you can have style that's based on another style. Added that as well. Styles can be cleared, and you may say, why do I care? Well, this really sets the tone for being able to reset styles, which means you can start to do some interesting skinning kind of things, dynamic skinning kinds of things. The list box in Silverlight 3 was single select. We now support multi-select. So we did a lot of fit and finish work here is really what you're seeing. The second to last one, or the last one, I guess, before I call out Karen's talk, is something Scott roughly touched on in his talk this morning. But if people are familiar with the Visual State Manager, basically our controls have a set of states, and that's really key to how you design the controls. But we built in some new states into Silverlight, a set of Silverlight controls, which is an invalid state. And that's actually what Scott showed this morning when he showed the text box with that little red thing with an error message around the text box. That's actually a state built into the default Silverlight controls. So now you can actually have a text box go into an invalid state without having to write, and have a visualizer for the invalid state without having to do anything. It's just supported out of the box. But Karen is going to go into detail on her session on Friday, as well as Brad's doing a session that'll talk about this as well. Other things, I did show the save file dialog, but we've added system colors in Silverlight 3. And what this means, mostly what this means is that if you're writing a high contrast app, so in Silverlight 2 we gave you a way to say, you're in high contrast mode, figure out what to do. In Silverlight 3, we give you a way to say you're in high contrast mode, and you can go pull out the system colors to actually make it look like the system's high contrast mode. For text improvements, we have heard a lot of feedback on text. We are, unfortunately, Silverlight 3, the beta that was released today, doesn't have ClearType in it, but it will be in the final release of Silverlight 3. This, in my opinion, and I am not a text expert, but when I can tell the difference in text quality, it's a significant improvement. So we have it running internally. We're doing some perf tuning on it, but I can tell you that the quality of text will pick up significantly in Silverlight 3 with this feature. Turns out in Silverlight 2, if your caret in your text box was always black, and it turns out that wasn't okay for some people, go figure. So we gave you the other extreme. You can now make your caret a brush, which means if you want your caret to be a video, you can make your caret a video. Go party on, people. We have a flag to optimize animating text. What we do to make our text good in Silverlight 2 and in Silverlight 3 is we do what's called baseline snapping to pixels. When you're animating text, it would create this chunky thing because it kept snapping. So now we give you a way to turn that off so that you can get a smooth animation for your text. And last thing we did was for our glyphs element, which is our fixed text element. Before, if you wanted to do something with glyphs, you had to actually bring the font file with you, and now our glyphs element can actually support system fonts, which is really big for some East Asian scenarios. Finally, we did a couple tweaks on image such that it's a lot easier to get the image size before you put the image in the tree, which has been painful for some people, as well as when you're actually loading an image, you can now say bypass the cache to get the image. But anyway, there's a set of pretty simple improvements like that. In the SDK, and I believe Sean Oster has a talk where he's going to go into more detail on this, but we have a set of controls that I just ran out of time to talk about or to show demos of, but luckily we do have another session that talks about these, but dock panel, wrap panel, which I did show, tree view, view box. Anyway, a set of new things that are now part of the SDK. Other big additions, we have the SEO stuff. We have data control, updates to the data grid, some data controls, navigation framework. That's going to be, Brad A's doing a talk right after this, and he's going to talk about this as well as what we've done for SEO support and in-tier. We have some improvements in Silverlight to talk to web services, and Eugene is doing a talk either Thursday or Friday where he's talking about what we've done there. But we do binary XML, SOAP faults. We do some stuff now with credentials that we didn't before. But anyway, that's the talk to go to for that. And then I've talked about Sean's talk a couple times, but he's going to talk about toolkit release. So with that, and I saved for my last topic, out of browser. And one thing is hopefully I can clear up, there's really actually a quick demo this morning about what out of browser is and how it works. And so I want to go into at least a little bit of details about out of browser. The best thing I can say for anybody who wants to learn about out of browser is that there was a embargoed session where they didn't release the title that Mike Karsh is giving that's right after this talk, and it's now called out of browser something or other. Anyway, it's right after this talk, but they didn't release the title before because they didn't want anybody to know we were doing out of browser. But Mike is going to go into a whole hour and 15 minutes of details about our out of browser model. But I do want to give you an overview to let you know exactly how this works. And one of the nice things about our out-of-browser model is that it is sandboxed. And sandbox meaning you get basically the same sandbox that Silverlight has when running in the browser. So we don't actually open up any new surface area. when you're out of the browser. We do a tweak on isolated storage to give you a little bit more default storage, but otherwise your default capabilities in browser and out of browser are the same. And one of the reasons we did that is because it's really easy to now install this thing without a scary prompt. And I'll show you that. But it really makes any inertia to getting your online app offline or installed out of browser, it makes it really, really easy to do. And another really nice thing about this is that it's just built into Silverlight. So if you've got Silverlight running already, you got Silverlight 3 running, or your customers have Silverlight 3 on their box, they don't need to do anything else to get the offline capabilities or out-of-browser capabilities of Silverlight. It's just baked into Silverlight. So when Scott talked about us reducing our size by 40K, part of that was also adding out-of-browser in there. It's just part of the core platform. We do have, it's enabled per application, which I will walk you through. And there are two ways that you can actually take something out of browser. And one is you right-click, and we add a menu item that says take out of browser. And basically the menu item says install onto this computer. And we allow the app author to create their own button that they can brand whatever way they see fit that will also allow the application to be taken out of browser. In order to support this, we did add some new networking APIs, and these work inside and outside of the browser. And these are APIs to tell you when you're connected, when you have a network connection, and when you're disconnected, and we give you, of course, a change state as well. And then we also allow you to detect your launch state, so you can tell whether you were launched in the browser or whether you're launched outside of the browser. And then we have some updating APIs such that you can tell if there's a new update available and provide UI. If not, in most cases, we just actually, if you deploy a new version of the app, we automatically pick it up and update it, somewhat similar to the web model. Now, a couple caveats in this model. The model itself is we take a Zap offline, and Zap being our application. So it doesn't mean everything you have needs to be in that Zap, but effectively it makes it really easy to deploy if everything your app needs lives in that Zap. And Mike will show you examples where that it doesn't have to be the case. The sample I'm showing, that is the case, but that's really the easiest deployment model for a Silverlight out-of-browser application. And effectively, the way you build these is pretty much the same as the way that you build any other Silverlight application. You just build it, you change the manifest, and then you can run it out of browser. So with that, let me just give you a demo. I basically took that Chess Wars, and I actually made it a slightly more usable app, which is just a local chess app. And let's just run it. It's actually a chess app. I haven't offline enabled it. This is just my standard online version of this app, but this is human versus computer, and if I play for more than 30 seconds, I will lose. So don't beg me to do that, because I can tell you who will win that one. So what I want to show you, though, is how do I make this thing offline enabled? How do I do that? We will have better tooling support for this by the time that Silverlight releases its final version later this year. But today, within the application, by default, when you create a Silverlight app, you get a app manifest.xaml. And in there, you'll see a commented out section that says, uncomment this to make available offline. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to uncomment this. And this is pretty much it. Now, what I did do is you can add a short name or a title. I had previously went in and changed the short name and title. You can give it icons. Mike will go through all the details of how to add icons and configure this, but this is the minimum required to offline or out of browser enable your application. That's it. So now I run my app, and I can right-click, and I can install Silverlight Chess. And the SN, by the way, I put that in there specifically so I could call out, there's a short name, and we use the short name in certain cases, and we use the title in other cases. And I just wanted to make sure that in this sample it was really explicit when we use the short name. So the short name is being used there. So if I run the app again, I can right-click, and I can say install Silverlight Chess onto this computer, and I can say where do I want to install it. That's all. That's all I have to do is just that right there. And I can install it onto my desktop or start menu, but I'm not going to do that because I want to show you one more thing, just because. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my app here, and make the main part of the app invisible, and instead add a button that says, just to show you, right-click may not be the most discoverable thing for your users, so you want some other way to be able to customize that experience. So in this case, I basically hid the main chessboard. Instead, I'm going to put a button with content equal to, you know, whatever, install chess now, and click equals, and whoop, I got a detached click in there already? Great. And we'll go into the detached click. And in here, this is called, and this is now I can programmatically say I want to uninstall. I can only do this in a user-generated event handler or in response to a user-initiated gesture. So you just can't write code when your app starts that says, hey, install my little funny app offline. You can't do that. It has to be a user gesture where they click on something to cause it to install the app. And the way I do that is I do, application dot current dot detach. And that's it. So I just wrote an event handler that will detach this. The last thing I want to do is, this is going to be huge, so horizontal alignment center and vertical alignment center. So now let's run my app again. And now what you'll see is I got a great little, where did my button go? Thank you. And then I want that. Just get rid of it. I was just coding up this demo last night. I was telling Mike, I go, you know what? I think I'm going to just wing it for this offline thing. And this is what you see me winging it. So now I do install chess now. And now I get the exact same thing. So in this case, yes, start menu, desktop, perfect. And now I'm going to run it. And guess what you're going to see? You're going to see that button again. Whoops. It's intentional. So I was also talking to Mike last night, and we were talking about a potential bug we have in offline, and you're gonna, or with updating, and you're going to get to see it here now. So potential. It'll be interesting to see. As I said, I am winging it. So what I want to do is when I first start this application, if it started offline, I want to show my other UI. So I'm going to go in my loaded here and say if application dot current dot, let's see, running offline. So this will tell me if it's running offline. Then I want to do, you know what, if I'm running offline, I want to show the full app. So I take chess. Oops. Chess is what I call that thing, chess dot visibility equals visibility dot visible. And the other one was, I think, detach dot visibility equals visibility dot collapsed. And build it. Now, forget the fact that I just built it. And this is the part that Mike and I were debating, is that whether or not the following would work, which is I haven't done anything. I just built the app. I'm going to run my chess app again. And what's going to happen is I'm going to run it again. I'm going to run my chess app again, and you're going to see I still have installed chess now. I didn't do anything. I just rebuilt my app, which as part of building it, I should let you know that copies it to the server. So when I run the app again, what happens is it runs the app, and the app goes, oh, now it's running. It goes, hey, I got a new version available. Right now, this app is getting an event, which I didn't respond to, that says, hey, there's a new version. Do you want to allow the user to close down and restart? I didn't respond to that, but what should happen by default anyway, and this is the big test here, we should update, which we do correctly. So automatically we picked up the new update and went ahead and show it here. So now I have my offline chess version running on my local desktop. So pretty cool. Now, last thing, if I get tired of getting beat by that chess app, then I can just say remove this application, and poof, it all goes away. Cleaned up. And with that, I think I'm ready for questions, but and Mike's got to talk right after this, but that's it. So thank you, everybody, and I got 5 minutes worth of questions that I'll take.
Hello.
I think they have microphones if you have questions.
Yeah, right here.
Microphones, right?
Is it?
Microphone.
Do we have plans to run offlines without Chrome?
Excuse me? So,
To offline the apps without Chrome.
so the question is, can you do out-of-browser apps without Chrome? And today in Silverlight 3, we do run with basically the OS Chrome in there. And again, that's mostly because we want to make sure it's secure by default. We will consider opening that up to being able to do Chromeless in the future. But in Silverlight 3, you do get the Chrome of the operating system.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Which version of shaders do you support? And is shaders actually accelerated on GPU?
Sorry, is that... Can you step up to the mic, please? Sorry.
Hello?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Better now. Which version of shaders do you support? There's like 4 versions of HS.
It's the question is, what version of shaders do we support? And it's Pixel Shader 2.0.
Oh, 2.0. Okay.
It's 2.0.
And is it accelerated on GPU or is it software?
The question is it GPU accelerated? And today, for security reasons, it is not. We do have a highly optimized, tuned, internal shader implementation. So we're effectively have some hand-tuned assembler to make those things scream. But it is not GPU accelerated at this point in time. Go ahead.
Is it possible to customize the dialog box, the install application dialog box?
Is it possible to customize?
Yeah, the install application dialog box.
So the question is it possible to customize? There is some, I didn't explain it, but the icon that's shown in there is customizable and brandable by the app author. Mike will talk about that in his session next and show how you can customize that dialog.
Right, thanks.
Go ahead, back there.
Hi, how's it going? Are you guys planning on adding APIs to support better integration with the OS? For example, a menu API, so that on the Mac you actually get the menus where they belong, or drag and drop and printing, that sort of thing.
So the question is, are we going to have deeper integration with the underlying OS when outside of the browser? Is that?
Yeah. Particularly menus, because on the Mac the menu is really what makes or break the app.
So I think the best way to think of this is our first step in that direction, and we have lots of other bigger steps that we'd like to take, so that certainly is in no way, shape, or form out of the question.
All right.
Go ahead.
2 questions. Flow document and printing.
What was the first one?
Flow document and
Flow
printing.
document and printing. Wow, you hurt me. Cuts real deep. Flow document and printing. Painful.
No, not together.
Yeah.
I mean flow document support and any printing support.
Yes, we do not have flow document in Silverlight 3, and we do not have a printing story in Silverlight 3. We are working feverishly on both of those, and when I say that, I mean we have actively people working on those features to get them to market as soon as possible. But at this point in time, we do not have either in Silverlight 3.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
So how you guys see the WPF and the Silverlight APIs? Are they starting to divert a little bit? Is there a plan to converge them?
So the question is, how do we see the Silverlight and WPF APIs? What we try to do is that if it makes sense to keep them the same, we absolutely positively keep them the same. There are some times where either it's in the form of simplification, that there are certain cases where we just need to have them diverge a little bit. Sometimes you see that, but we really try to minimize it. When we do diverge, we try to take any divergence and immediately bring it back into WPF or vice versa. So examples of that have been Visual State Manager, where we did it in Silverlight, and we turned around and brought it right back into WPF. And so we do try to be careful anytime we diverge and be really pragmatic about how we bring those back. But at the same time, we don't want to do things where we have to add the wrong API in Silverlight just because we don't want to diverge temporarily for basically the better of both platforms in the long term. So we try to do our best to keep them the same, but we do diverge occasionally. So let's see up here.
Do you guys have an open file dialog box, just like a save file dialog box?
Yeah, the question is, do we have an open file dialog box? And we do. That was in Silverlight 2.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Joe, 2 quick questions. Backward compatibility to 2.0, is it 100%?
So the question is backwards compatibility with Silverlight 2.0?
Yeah. All of our existing apps, are they going to run completely?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a huge suite of apps that we run over and over and over again to make sure that we're 100% backwards compatible. I will say there are a couple known differences that we'll publish that are conscious decisions where it was either security or it was we were doing something so silly and made such an egregious mistake, and there's only like 3 of them, that we just felt we really should fix it rather than keeping that behavior compatible. In most cases, if we had really bad behavior in 2.0 that we felt we should fix, we quirk it. So we actually do have a quirks mode so that 2.0 apps will continue to work the way they should, and we can make the correct behavior in 3.0. But there are just a few cases where the behavior was just so bad that we decided to go ahead and make the change. We don't think it'll affect apps, and we haven't found any that it does affect, but just to let you know, we have documented them, but our goal was 100% compat.
Okay,
That's
so
the goal.
second question real quick is, are we able to reference fonts outside of the compiled binaries? Right? Can we reference fonts outside of compiled binaries?
Can you reference fonts outside the compiled binaries? So there are ways you could do your own mechanism to basically grab a font, download it, and reference it. But in general, that's actually something we've moved away from. And the reason why is because there's a lot of IP in fonts. And since there's a lot of IP in fonts, we didn't want to do anything in the platform that made it easy to leverage that IP without necessarily paying for that IP. So we've actually done it so that you actually have to do a lot of extra work in the platform to be able to do exactly what you're saying. And that was a conscious, intentional decision to preserve font IP. That's why we tend to leverage the fonts on the system now, where we didn't before.
Okay.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, we were just hoping that the responsibility would be on the developer, not on Microsoft.
Yeah,
So that's our issue, not necessarily yours.
It's a really great point. We had this debate for months inside of Microsoft, if it makes you feel any better, about exactly that. And ultimately, it was felt that it was better to not make it super easy in the platform to do exactly that.
Okay.
But it's good feedback.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you got type data. Do you got type data templates and commanding support in 3.0?
I heard the commanding was the second one. What was
typed data templates.
So type data templates and commanding are commanding we definitely don't support, and type data templates, Karen, is not there either, right? Not in Silverlight 3.0.
Awesome presentation, though.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hey, do you have multiple instances of the Zap running in offline mode?
The question is, do you have multiple instances?
Can we have multiple instances
Yeah,
running?
you can certainly have multiple instances.
And local messaging support?
Yes, absolutely.
That sounds great.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You mentioned the local messaging is based on strings. Do you have support for byte streams communication?
Do we have support for
byte stream?
Byte streams?
Yeah.
In
between the different instances.
Oh, between local messaging? Yeah. We don't. We just have, in version 1, we kept it really simple, and it's string-based messaging between the 2 plugins.
Okay, is this something that you were planning to do going forward, though?
Well,
is this something that you were planning to add to?
It's something we're looking at feedback, and if we get significant feedback that people feel that's a really compelling scenario, then it's something we'll look at adding.
Okay, I have one simple question. There was some performance problem with isolated storage in terms of reading and writing large amount of data. Is that an improvement in Silverlight 3?
Yes, absolutely. We had some performance problems with isolated storage in Silverlight 2. We fixed that. And it's much improved performance in Silverlight 3.0.
Thank you.
Which is super important for our out-of-browser scenarios.
Thank you.
So, question back there or not?
Yeah, what's the default size for the isolated storage for the offline mode?
Today, the default size, I believe, is 25 megabytes, Mike?
It's still 1 megabyte. When you go out of browser.
Yep. So out of browser, so in browser, it's 1 megabyte.
Sure.
The only way we widen the sandbox at all is when you go out of browser,
right.
We widen it to 25 megabytes.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Local communication, excuse me. Local communication between plugins, is that also available between the
yes.
between running on the desktop and running in the browser?
Yes, it is. So the question is, can you do local communication between your in-browser and your out-of-browser version? Absolutely. Yes.
What are the other additions to the binding syntax besides like element name?
So there's a set of them, templated parent, blah, blah, blah. I think, Karen, you're going to cover those in... The question was, what new syntax did we add to binding? And the answer was we added relative parent and templated parent to self, I think, in... relative source, templated parent, and self. Thank you, Karen. Channeling Karen Corby. Thank you very much. Yeah. Go ahead.
Are the new networking APIs available also in browser mode?
Yes, the networking APIs are available in browser and out of browser. So you can tell when your in-browser application loses a network connection for what that's working. So, other questions back there? Nope, go ahead.
Is there alpha channeling with the video capability?
So the question is, do we have alpha support in video? And we don't in Silverlight 3. So you can do the trick like I showed, which you can chroma key your video and mask it off with shader. But at this point in time, we still don't have alpha support.
Is there a timeline you guys have?
We've been looking at that for, if I can share a little insight. Alpha video was our #1 feature in Silverlight 1. It was our #1 feature in Silverlight 2. And for a while, it was our #1 feature that we were going to do in Silverlight 3. Yep. So what happens is other features just start cramming in there and become more important, like printing and those sorts of things. So it's always been a high priority feature. And we hope to have it soon in Silverlight. And hopefully it'll be out in the next version. But all I'm saying is that I don't want to commit to it. It has been a high priority feature for quite a while, and we'd love to find a way to get it into the platform. It does get slightly easier with H.264, or you could say it gets harder because we have 2 media formats now. But it doesn't. There's no way to do it in VC1 today. Yeah. So that creates a problem, whereas in the MP4 container and H.264, there is a more standard way of doing that. So we may be able to leverage that and make it easier.
So for version 3, you're not going to support alpha for sure?
Yeah, the only thing we have is the chroma key support that I showed here. Yes.
Great, thanks.
Yep. Go ahead.
Can you do multi-file download?
Can you do, excuse me?
Multi-file download.
Sorry, I missed it again.
Multi-file.
Multi-file download. I believe there's a, we don't support it natively in the platform. I believe, is there a control that, a third party that does download? Yeah. Yeah, you could. Yeah, are you talking about save as? I guess is what I was thinking.
Yeah.
A multiple save as, yeah. Which, yeah. No, we single file save as.
I mean, point to a folder and then it downloads the folder.
Oh, you want to point to a folder, but that's you're talking about file. So you could certainly write something. Yeah. So you're pointing to the folder in the cloud. Is that right? You want to point to a folder
on the client.
On the client, and then you want to be able to
download to the client.
To the upload.
Take a collection of items and save them to a single destination folder, like in images, for example.
Are you going from desktop to cloud, or are you going cloud to desktop?
No, the web application. Browser to desktop.
Oh, browser to desktop. I see what you're saying. You want to go browser to desktop. So I'm getting the red light. So you want to take multiple files in your browser. You basically, where the files in the browser coming from? I guess I'm still missing that. Is that coming from the cloud?
Think about your thumbs thing where you were dragging thumbs over for your
movie
clips.
And you just want to be able to save
You want to
those?
save all those thumbs at one shot.
Yeah, so you can certainly do that in isolated storage today, but we don't provide a way to do that with file save dialog. If that answers your question. Go ahead.
Is there any plan to do a visual layout from Visual Studio? To be able to drag and drop elements onto a page?
In Visual Studio? Is that what you're asking? So there is a talk on Friday where Mark is going to show off what they've done in Visual Studio 2010, but you will see exactly that feature. And so it will be, you'll see it soon enough. You'll see it in Visual Studio 2010 will contain a visual designer for Silverlight.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead.
Is there any plans for peer-to-peer TCP connection?
So the question is there plans for peer-to-peer? And internally, it's something we'd love to have. It's a high priority feature, higher priority than Alpha Video. I'm just poking the bear if he maybe left. Peer-to-peer is something that we think a lot about, and we would love to see in the platform. Go ahead.
Just wondering if one of the additions to data binding will allow us, like when users in a text box, to immediately apply the binding instead of it just lost focus.
Yeah, so the question is, can you be able to more finely control your binding in a text box? And so we have the ability now to explicitly turn off binding, and I believe explicitly trigger binding as well, right? Right, Karen? Yeah, so you can do exactly that. All right, and with that, thank you who stayed till the very end.